Okay, let's go. Mhm. Let's go. Well, let's get back to Mitzvah Kuf Lamed Hey. Let's just read it a little bit and understand the problems. A mitzvah, a chomesh u'shloishim u'meya, hi shetivonu lishbois or hashbis me'avodas haaretz b'shana shvius. So it doesn't list malachas in a specific manner. It doesn't say this malacha, that malacha. It's a general discussion of that me'avodas haaretz. And anything which is subsumed under Avodas Haaretz, l'chayra, is subsumed under this Mitzvas Aseh. And we discussed last week whether the mitzvah is on the person himself or he's somehow he has a chiyuv that his kalka shouldn't be over. Okay. Say the Gemara, the Zohar, we discussed this. What's very clear over here is the b'chorish u'bakotze tishbois refers to shvius, and the general assumption is just before we get involved in anything that there's an isachrisha midaraisa, because b'chorish u'bakotze tishbois. Then he says, "Ukva nichpal zeh hatzibui kama pomim." This assay was said many times. The Omer Shabbos and Yiloret, and we'll see that there's some that are goes Shnas Shabbos and Yiloret. Okay. Ukvar kodem lanu omrom hai Shabbos nasehu, which we mentioned in Mitzvah Tzadi, Aseh Tzadi. Hai Shabboson Asehu is Avashi's memra, and it's formed as far as Yom Tov is concerned. We have to understand. So what does it do with Shvius? The Omar Yis'ale Gam Kein V'Shov So Oretz Shabbos Lashem. Ukva Hisboye Mishpatei Mitzvah Zo Gam Kein Mesech Shvius. The Ein Chayvosu Min HaTeira Ela B'Eretz Yisrael. The mitzvah of Shvis Oretz is only in Eretz Yisrael, Min HaTeira. So here now to get started. The formulation in the mitzvah of Avodas Haaretz is not only here. You'll find it in the Minyan HaKotze, Aseh Kuf Lamed Hey, Lishbois Mavodas Haaretz, and the same Aseh, Shenema B'chorish V'Kotze Tishbois. And the Protei HaMitzvos in Hilchos Shmita B'Yovel, Shetishbois Haaretz B'Shvius Mimalachta, very general thing. And in Perek Aleph Halacha Aleph Mitzvas Aseh, Lishbois Mavodas Haaretz, Uve'avodas Ilon, B'Shana Shvius, Shenema B'Shov So'et Shabbos Lashem, V'Nema B'Chorish V'Kotze Tishbois. He has both psukim, but the order is reversed. We'll see if there's any significance of that. In Minyan HaKotze and here the mitzvah is B'Chorish V'Kotze Tishbois, and in Mishnah Torah it's V'Shov So'oretz Shabbos Lashem. Now you gain something from this V'Shov So'oretz Shabbos Lashem, because the pasuk says Sheish Shonim Tizla Sodecho V'Sheish Shonim Tizmo Kamecho V'Yosaftes Tvuoso. So once you say B'Shov Sa'oret Shabbos Lashem, it refers not only to Avodas Adoma, but even to Avodas Ilonis. That's it says again. B'Shov Sa'oret Shabbos Lashem, Sheish Shonim Tizla Sadecha, V'Sheish Shonim Tizmo Kamecha, V'Saftes Tvosa. V'Shon Shvi Shabbos in Yelo Oretz, Shabbos Lashem, Sod Cholei Sizra, V'Kamo Cholei Sizma. So this fits very well with what he says in Perek Aleph, Halacha Aleph, because there he said, if you recall, Mitzvas Aseh Lishbois Me'avodas Ha'oretz, Avodas Ha'ilon. Here he just says something which he construed as Avodas Ha'oretz. It's Avodas Ha'oretz, it could be B'chosh V'chotze Tikso. If you want to include also Avodas Ha'ilon, so then you have to move to the pasuk which he quotes in Mishnah Torah. And that's maybe why he switches the order around. B'Shov Sa'oret Shabbos Lashem V'nema, and then he switches V'nema B'chosh V'chotze Tiksa. So he switches the order around. So it comes out, according to Mishnah Torah, B'Shov Sa'oret Shabbos Lashem, it's not only Avodas Ha'oretz, but it's also Avodas Ha'ilon. Now, here comes something very important, okay? It seems to be pashas from the Rambam that the way he formulates Mitzvas Aseh, as we said before, Titzivon Lishbois Ma'avodas Ha'oretz, whichever way where he's following Mishnah Torah to include Ilonos, or the way he's doing it over here, or the way he's doing it in HaKotzer, or in the Protei Mitzvahs, it seems to be a general rule that call Meleches Kalka, or call Meleches Ilon. That's the Lashon. Lishbois Ma'avodas Ha'oretz, Shenem B'chosh Tishbois, in the Minyan HaKotzer. In the Protei Mitzvos Ha'oretz, B'Shvius Malachta, general thing, anything which is Meleches Ha'oretz, and Hilchos Shemitah V'Yovel, Lishbois Ma'avodas Ha'oretz, Ma'avodas Ha'ilon. It's a general thing. And the Rambam seems to say like that, also in Pirush Mishnayos, in Moed Katan. Ukvar Yodato, V'nizboi in Perek Aleph Mishnah Beis. Ukvar Yodato, V'nizboyer L'cho B'Shvius Shekol Shehu Toeles L'Adomo Oy L'Ilonus Asuim B'Shvius L'fi She'omo Yis'ale V'Shovso Ha'oretz. Kol Shehu L'Toeles L'Adomo L'Ilonus, anything, any pu'ula which you do, which is toelis, is basically also min HaTorah, for the Adoma or for the Ilon. That's very clear. In fact, the Shulchan Aruch HaShulchan Aruch in Hilchos Shemitah Siman Yud Gimel is of the opinion that the Rambam's opinion Midaraisa, there's an Isa Aseh, there's a Mitzvah Aseh on all Meleches Kalka. V'yuli, he says, the Afagaf, the Malkis, Leka, Rak Be'elu Adal Melochis, that's in Zoymer, Zoyreya, Kreitzem, B'tzira, Mikol Makom Isa Aseh Yesh B'chol HaMelochis. The Harei B'Kor B'Shov Sa'oretz Nichlu Kol HaMelochis. Okay, so we have to take this Mitzvah later, but it's very clear in the Aruch HaShulchan Aruch that all Meleches Ho'adomo vo'ilon o'osem min ha'Torah. That are the toilets of the Kalka, Teres Oretz, Teres Elon. But the problem is the statement which the Aruch HaShulchan Aruch has made is very interesting because he assumes that as far as the Lois Aseh, it's very limited. It's only Aseh which is broad. I'm not sure, since the Ram quotes the Shvisa from Avodas Haaretz in Shiur Shishi and the Aseh in the Lois Aseh B'Dov Echad, you would a priori get the impression that the Ashara and the Aseh are almost a mirror image of each other, and there's equivalence relationship. Hashirish Hashishi Shamitzvah Bo Aseh V'Lois Aseh Lo Limnois Aseh Shebo in Mitzvas Aseh V'Lav Shebo in Mitzvos Aseh Ta Shadovo Echod Yeh Bo Aseh V'Lois Aseh Alechem Mishloishet Konim Im Shiyeh Ma'aseh Min HaMa'aseh Mitzvas Aseh V'Oivo Lo Yavo Mitzvos Aseh. It's the mirror image. K'moi Shabbos, the Aseh of Melacha, and the Lois says on Lamates Melachas. V'yontif u'shmita she'asis Melacha b'hem mitzvos Lois aseh, v'amenucha l'shvisa b'hem mitzvos aseh, k'mo she's boya. Just if you're interested, I'm not getting involved in this now. My Sefer Pri Chaim in Simcha Chav Gimel, Ha'ora 18, I point out you can be doich of this. Okay, say it. You also find the Lashon in Sefer HaMitzvos when we refers to the Ashoras, it's in a very broad way. He says like this: Lois Aseh Reish Chaf Aleph, She'izhirnu me'avodas Elon b'shana Shvius. It's a very broad term which refer to any melacha. V'amo yis'aleh v'kama cholisizmo. Gam ki chayiv malchus v'loshen sifroa hazera v'azoma b'chlal hoye v'lo mo yotzu lahakish aleim mazera mazora v'zomir v'yuchodim bo shehein avodas haaretz u'be'ilon af ani ein li elo do v'shu avoda ba'aretz u'be'ilon. Odd is that the lav, we're ready to say it's avodas haaretz u'be'ilon, but the aseh, at least in Sefer HaMitzvos, is only in avodas haaretz, and we pointed out Mishnah Torah, it's also in avodas Elon. And that's what he says in Perek Aleph Halacha Aleph. But listen to what he does in Perek Aleph Halacha Aleph of Shemitah V'Yovel. Mitzvas Aseh lishbois me'avodas haaretz v'avodas Elon b'shana shvius shene'ema b'shavs haaretz Shabbos l'Hashem v'ne'ema b'chodesh v'chotzer tishbois v'chol ha'isa melacha me'avodas haaretz o Elonos b'shana zo bitul Mitzvas Aseh. So the Lois Aseh and the Aseh are going on the same thing. So you expect an equivalence relationship from the simple reading. Shenema sot cholisizmo, sizrav es chama cholisizmo. So it seems to be pretty clear that the Aseh and the Lois Aseh are on all avodas haaretz v'Elon. And this, you get the impression, is not like the Aruch HaShulchan Aruch, which basically says that it's only the Aseh that is a deraisa that applies to malachas in general, but not the lav. However, there's a problem, and this is probably where the Or HaShulchan is coming from. The Rambam in Hilchos Shmita V'Yovel, Perek Aleph Halacha Yud, B'nei Mahi Tiru Kol Eile other malachas She'im Lo Yashke Ta'aseh Ha'oretz Melecha V'Yomus Kol Eitz Shebo V'Hoil V'Isa Dvorim Ha'elu U'Kiyotze Bohem Midivreihem Lo Ygozel Al Elu She'ein Osa Min HaTeira Elo Oison Shnei Ovois U'Shtei Tolodos Shalahem Kmo Shebi'alma. So this seems to say that it's only the those Tzmira, Zriya, Ktsira, and Betzira. You have to keep in mind that the discussion over here is not what's called in Gemara Loshen Li'ivuya Ilona, to enhance the Elon, but L'ukme Ilona, to make sure that the Elon doesn't die. There's no hefsid, L'ukme Ilona. So any malachas which are L'ukme Ilona might be the Rabbanon. Why do I assume that? And remember the Rambam Pirush Mishnayos in Moikoton, Shekol Sheila To'eles Adomo, O Le'ilonis Asum B'Shvius, Lefi Shoma Yisal V'Shom Sa'aretz. It's all inclusive, but it's only the To'eles. Here the Rambam is clearly talking about a case that the Oretz is Melecha. It's a preventative in order something shouldn't happen. It shouldn't, the tree shouldn't die or whatever. He says now let's just read the Miri, for example, in Avodah Zarah, and Nunomid Beis, he clearly says that wherever B'mokim Hefsid and it's Eretz Melecha, they were matir b'shum ukme ilona. So he clearly learns this case ukme ilona. So basically, then you would have said that all the melachos in this case are the Rabbanon, but if the melacha is expressed mefurish in the Torah, then we're not matir it. The problem is the Ram should be mechalik. You could have said that mefurish b'Torah you get malchus, and not mefurish b'Torah you don't get malchus. This is a double negative. However, the Ram is mechal between midarai, midminatei, midivreim, as opposed to mefurish b'kor, v'ena mefurish b'kor. Shh. Shh. This is very difficult. And because of that, the Or HaShulchan seems to assume that that the Aseh is in Shar Malachos, and the Lois Aseh is not Mishar Malachos, only Asmachta the Rabbanon. And that's what he says in Siman Yutes, Sif Gimel, Violi, the Avagav the Malchus Leka Rak Be'elu Dal Malachos, Mikom Ge'is Aseh Yesh B'chol HaMalachos, Da Bekor V'Shav Sa'oretz Nichlu Kol HaMalachos, וזה שאומרו, שום דקרא אסמכתא בעלמא, זה רק שריבה תרס כהנים מלאבים, ואין הכוונה רק מדרבנן אסורים, אלא שמדרבנן יש גם איסור לאו. I'm not sure what the importance of that is, because also in the Torah, l'chayr shouldn't be matir. So l'chayr, what he's saying, you only matir that which you don't get malchus for. So I'm a little confused about everything, but the Pashas Lashon Rambam is mashma you shouldn't be machalik, and that it's all the same. That the aseh and the lois aseh are the same. It's just that which is foolish b'kol, it gets malchus. It's difficult to read halacha yud, but you have a problem because it's very clear of the equation in halacha aleph, and halacha yud seems to point that even the aseh is completely d'rabbanan, but the Aruch HaShulchan that there's an aseh and not a lav. I don't know. Now, it could be this asmachta ba'alma. We'll have to see what's going on, because you look at the Gemara Moy Cotton. Daf Gimel told us lo'asa achmona dichsiv b'shana shvius Shabbos and Yilo Oretz sodcho lo'isizra v'chul v'goyme michtei zmira b'chlal zriya u'betzira b'chlal ktsira l'may hilchos kasvinu achmona l'memra da'hani told us mechayiv achrinis lo mechayiv. So the kitzi is that the whole discussion that the Torah makes these four specific is that you chayiv only these, but it doesn't mean that the others are mutter. It just is no chiyuv. You only chayiv malchus and refuish bakra, and then the Gemara asks, since some sifra is a pirush makubal, that's what I would learn the Gemara. Why don't we look at everything else, even though it's not mentioned explicitly in the Kla, as mefurish b'Kla, because the pirush makubal is enough to engender chiv malchus. V'lo v'osanya lo yisrael yisizra v'kamach lo yisizmo ein li ala zihua v'zimo minayin l'nikush v'yido. This is a pirush makubal. Kol kamachaloi, loy kol malacha shebeschotcha, v'loy kol malacha shebekamacha. And this, the Gemara answers, midrabanon uko asmachta ba'alma. See, here I will learn midrabanon uko asmachta ba'alma. Midrabanon, as the Rambam uses the word drabanon in Shirish Aleph, that any Yud Gimel Midos, since it was derived from the Rabbanon, it's not a Pirush Makubal from Moshe Rabbeinu. So it's only Yud Gimel Midos, so you wouldn't get Malchus for it, but it could be Sidaraisa. But since it's Luk Milana, you matter it. However, then the word with asmachta means that it's not a pirush makubal, as every pirush makubal needs a bona fide basis on the pasuk, and here it's only Yud Gimel Midos. This is clearly like the Ritva. The Ritva on Daf Gimel interprets mufurish that the asmachta is real asmachta. So you can take it as you want it, but you have this problem mineu bay, that it seems to be very clear from the Rambam Halacha Aleph that everything is deraisa, and Halacha Yud he says the Rabbanon, and maybe the Rabbanon means, the question is the Rabbanon min HaTorah, does it mean midivreim that it's only the Rabbanon? Then whichever way you spin it, it's a problem. Now, there's another problem over here. Tishbois. Where was this pasuk formulated? So, Reb Kvega in his Tesefis on the Mishnayos and Peri Beis of Shvius, Mishnah Beis and Oisiyud Beis on the Tesis Yontiv, there are Maskul Ma'adrin. He says, Im Tema, Amaylo Sharina and Vachule, the Charishim B'Divri Seifrim. Kosheli. He says, how can you say Kosheli? Echev Shaloima, Cain, B'Time with the Masnisen? He says that it's because the reason is only Shkrisha L'Dabonon. Ho Masnisen Zu, the Srilei Tesis Shvius also, Af Shalei Bizman HaMikdash, I'll call the Srilei, the Tesis, Nafka Mikod B'Chol Shekot the Tishbois. The Koy HaShvius. Loi Machorish Erev Shvius, Shenich L'Shvius. Kaperik Alf Mishnah Dalet, so referring to Chrisha. And it's the Aseh of Chosh, it's this pasuk, Chosh Tishbois. V'im Kain, how he mefuish the Chorish v'shishis l'shvius, mefuish the Chorish v'shishis l'shvius, also min atera. Chen kos oramim, v'echel shmid b'saseh, l'shbois b'avodis ha'oretz, v'ilon b'shvius she'nema, b'shav ha'oretz, v'nema b'chosh v'chitzit Tishbois. So it means that it refers to shvius. V'im Kain, how he mefuish the also min atera. Achach motzasi shetoma Kain, Chodesh v'Sefer Mayim Chaim. V'li kosher oid. If you want, this is quoted in the Likutim there in Frankel's Rambam, the Mayim Chaim. V'li kosher oid al Rama now v'chein oro'o b'chinuch hevi aseh de shvius mikol v'chorosh v'kotzer v'ram perik beis posel teshi shvius halacha. So it's halacha v'rak b'zman HaMikdash. So the whole pasuk doesn't refer to shvius. And it tells you to darshan that you're allowed to do ktsira soime. There's no Isa Shabbos. Kopir sharam perek zayin t'midim. V'im kein koya Shabbos. This pasuk referring to Shabbos. Akad Ram called as a Mitzvas Aseh. So here, let's start with this and we'll move further. The Aruch HaShulchan in Siman Yutes, Sif Aleph, Kosor Ramam, Reish Perek Aleph, Mitzvas Aseh, Lishbois, Mavodas Adom, V'oretz, V'olis Elon, V'shon HaShvius, Shenema, V'shav Soretz, Shabbos L'Hashem, V'nema Chos V'tishbois, Choleis Melocha V'chule, Bit Mitzvas Aseh, Lo Lois Aseh. עד כאן לשאלה. וזה שהביא קרוא דבחור של קוצר תשפו, אף על גב דכפר ביאנו בריש תמיד י"חס, דענן קיימו לו כבי ישמואל, דין ובקווגס קשה. דיומו, דמקור זה הוא לשבס ברישס, מכל מוקרים. הביא הרמב"ם לפי פשט דקרוא, ועיקר עשה הוא מן הקרוא, the Vishavso Haaretz Shabbos L'Hashem. Kloima. Okay. So he says that you have even the Pashas HaKor is referring to Shvius. That's not a steer to the drasha. See, the question is, all these drashes about Omer and Toisa Shvius, the Gemara says, "Me'eno inyim lekan teneo inyim ledava acher." So the question is, and that's what I assume the Aruch HaShulchan is saying, that you don't have to assume. It's not necessary that a drasha, if it ain't no inyan, is not necessarily a steer to Pshuta Shomik. I'll explain to you what I mean. I think what's happening is that he's learning that these drosim Eino Inyan are drosim Yud Gimel Midas. Drosim Yud Gimel Midas, you can make galore. And even though the Pshuta Shomikah refers to something else. And that's what's happening over here. And you can have an Eino Inyan referring to Shabbos as the Drosha Ba'alma to be Mata Shabbos and still say the Pshuta Shomikah is referring to Shvius. And similarly, I found something like this in Rav Avin ben Rambam. He doesn't go as far, does not go as far as the Aruch HaShulchan. He says there's no hachra in Pshuta Shomikah, in itself interpreting per se, but he says the Chachomim were machriya. Shebachor shebakotzir nema shvius atzmo. But since that's a little bit odd, this hachra is not clear, the Rambam adds another pasuk, V'shov Solet Shabbos Hashem. And that's what I thought, maybe because of that, he reverses the order of Mishnah Torah, because he doesn't want the first thing, since it's not Boro, that it is referring to Shvius, he reverses the order. And the Aseh is V'shov Solet Shabbos Hashem. In Ma'aseh Nisim in Siman Yutes, Ach Pshuta Shomikah lo yachlit zeh, v'gam lo bo'o ha-Kabbalah zeh. There's no Kabbalah. There's no Pirush Makubal, and Pshuta Shomikah is not 100% clear. Omnom ha'achra b'divrei ha'chacham zal yoyre al shvius einu mima sheniska b'gmor mashkin bovad ach mima sheniska b'mechilta ki shom nizboye Rabbi Yehuda Reb Shimon tzorivim gam kein ki ha'kosav hu nema b'shvius. And this in general supports the principle that stam mechilta, stam sifra is a pirush makubal, and ki'ilu we know, or it's kila matikeh shvur, saying that that's the pasuk is referring to Shvius. V'al kol ponim, I'll read a little bit more. Ein edazal b'zo HaMitzvah me'akos b'chosh v'kotze tishbais levad v'asher leibo boy machlokes v'ein hu zal asher ya'alem mimenu ki efshel ha'akshelo v'al kein omo ukva nichpal ze pomim v'oma shna shabbos yelo. It's even the verse to Sefer HaMitzvos is not 100% clear, so he has other sources. That's a little bit odd, because he always talks about nichpal as he refers to it in Shurish Chi, that it's a reference to Chomer Aseh or Chomer Halav. And L'chayr he's saying over here. So I guess since it's nichma palmim, it's more than once, it's twice. So even if you forget about b'chosh v'kotze tiksa tishbois, you still have a dov chom. The chinuch clearly says this is a pirush makubal. The chinuch says in Kuf Yud Beis levato me'avodas haaretz b'shnas shvius shnei b'chos kotze tishbois ubo ha'pirush sh'alshon shvius nema sh'stav v'shel lasik bo klau avodas haaretz. Okay. So whatever it's worth here, it's very clear that there is a that this posik refers to Shvius in Pshuta Shomikah, and if you deny that, you have other psukim anyway. And I assume that the drashas of Eino Inyan are not a pirush makubal, but only a drasha b'alma, and therefore there's no steer, because the Rambam seems to say that and you have to say that. Because you look back to Shiur Chi, the Ram says, when there's nichpal, there's three options. There's nichpal in order to tell you choyma isa or choyma aseh, nichpal in order to mashlim din, and nichpal meino inyan, and he talks about the Gemara in Pesachim, in the second parak. So nichpal in meino inyan, at least in the point of view of Shiur Chi, is a steer to nichpal. And the Ram still says over here that it is nichpal. So the only way to do this logically is to say this im eno inyan is not the eno inyan of Shiur Chi that ki'ilu that is a pirush makubal or das the pshat in the pasuk or whatever, but it's tam drosha be'alma. So since tam drosha be'alma is nothing to do with pshuta shel mikol, you can be machriya acham that the pshuta shel mikol is referring to shvius and still have these droshes and still have nichpal. Now, next. But just to go over this, there's an amazing thing that it's possible, according to the Rambam, all malachas and shvius might be deraisa, both in terms of the aseh and the lois aseh, when it comes to v'ui ilana, which is an amazing point, if it's true. And the stama of his lashon over here seems to point to that. Stimus al-lashon. Now, the Rambam does something amazing. The Omar Shabbos on Yil Oretz the Girsa of Rav Avram and the Chinuch is Shnas, but Shnas Shabbos on Yil Oretz and the Chinuch and Kuf Yud Beis. It could be this is based on the Gisa ben Ochanala Moikot and Gimel Man Aleph Al Areni Don B'Chlal Prat U'Klal Shnema V'Yes Invein Zirech Oliv Simso Shnas Shabbos and Yil Oretz. Okay. Say that. So it could be that that's an assay, and that's the one that it's referring to over here. Now we have to get to Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi's memra, which was formulated by Yontif. Rav Ashi Omar Shabbos and the Yontif Asehu Ve'en Aseh Doiche Lois Aseh Ve'aseh. So the amazing thing, what's going on over here? What does the Rambam want from this? If there's a pirush makubal from Rav Ashi that Shabboson by Yontif might be an asay, but what does that tell us about Shemitah and Shvius? So this Rav Ashi you'll find in Shabbos Chav Daled Beis, Shabbos Kuf Lamed Gimel Amud Aleph, Pesachim Pei Daled Amud Aleph, all Nemar Gabe Yontif. I think there's a problem. That the word Shabboson is basically a Torah. It's a describing Shabbos. It's not a verb. It's not a tzivui. And the Rambam has a basic problem, or Rav Ashi has a problem. How do you derive an asay over here? So the Rambam learns in Rav Ashi, that since Shabboson is saying that the day should be a day of Shvisa, it's a description of the day, Shabboson, a day of Shvisa, so there's an implicit Aseh that you should be shameless on this day. And if we recall, we pointed out in many different places in the Rambam that the Rambam's opinion is you don't require an aseh mefurish in Torah shebiksav to be an aseh, but a mashmos of an aseh is also enough. So the Rambam learned the pshat and Rav Ashi that Shabbosan is aseh because since Shabbosan is a descriptive of a Torah, a description of the Yom HaShabbos, and the assumption, the conclusion is that there's implicit a command, a horah in the Torah of shvisa, so it's equivalent to say that there's a verb of shvisa. So Rav Ashi's conclusion is not, since it's not based on a pirush makubal, but it's an observation about how you can generate a mitzvah aseh for mashmos haloshen. So the Ram says, I see no reason to extrapolate from this that we should have in general that any place, any time the Torah is a Shabbosan, it could be a mitzvah aseh, which I think is very mistab if you accept the Ram's premises. Now, ukva hisbaru mishpatei mitzvazo gam kein b'sech shvius ve'en chavosam en atera ele be'eretz Yisrael. And this is in Shemitah V'Yovel Perek Dal Lochav Hey. Ein shvius noheges ele be'eretz Yisrael bovad shnei mekizavol ha'oretz v'noheges be'im v'nei habayis v'nei shelo v'nei habayis. So this is odd. We don't know what the Ram means, ain't shvius no heges, but I assume it refers to both, but it refers to at least the Isa Malacha and maybe also to the Din Hefka. Ain't shvius no heges. And this the Ram is talking about over here. It's Eino El Be'eretz Yisrael. And in Kuf Lamed, 1 second. Yeah. He also does it at the end of Kuf Lamed Daled, which is Hashvius Tishbetenu Tashto. Ve'eno choyv min haTorah el leperis Eretz Yisrael dafka. Okay. Okay, here. Next. HaMitzvah Aseh u'shloishim u'meya. He shetzivonu lekadesh shnas hachamishim. The Kiddashtem. This, you understand, is open to interpretation. How you mekadesh the shnas hachamishim? So the Rambam says kloima, and his usual kloima means that it's not clear, but this is his take on it. It's not 100% clear. Kloima. It's not. It's not incontrovertible from the text. Kloima lishpais me'avoda bo kmo hashmita. So it means that the same way there's an aseh of shvisa ma'avodas ha'oretz in shmita, there's an aseh by Yovel. V'amo yis'ale v'kidashtem eis shnas hachamishim shona. And then he quotes the Medrash Halacha, which is a pirush makubal according to the Rambam. Ubebeya omu kishem shenema b'shvius kach nema b'yovel. So what's nema b'shvius yovel seen as a lav? It doesn't talk about aseh. It doesn't say what the aseh is. It's an amazing thing what he did. Kloima hashvo b'neihem b'tzivui there's ashva as far as the Mitzvas Aseh, kmo shehishve b'neihem hakosav azhor, which is not, the strongest argument that I'm ever presented. He's interpreting that, what he wants to be true, or does steht in Teres Kohanim. We say that. Kmo she's boya, umishpatei shnas yoivel ushnas shmita. Okay, so you notice, that's before we get, into nitty gritty. The whole v'kinashtem at this point reflects itself only in avodas haaretz, on yoivel. However, then the next sentence, umishpatei shnas yoivel ushnas shmita shovin bashposas avodas hoadomo. Okay. Vehefke ma sheyitzmach means to be matir or mazniach. So he added a new element over here to v'kidashtem, and he just said the kloima, and he just says it. But he didn't say it up front. And not only didn't say up front, when you look at the Minyan HaKotzer, it also talks about the Minyan HaKotzer. He says, says like this. One second. He clearly says, I think it's there. I'll find it some other time. It just, I think it clearly says that that it's the avodas haaretz. However, in Mishnah Torah, I did also keep in mind over here, you get the clear impression, the Stimas Lashon Rambam, the mitzvah is not only on, it's on each yochid v'yochid. Every single person in Klal Yisrael, by shmira from avodas haaretz, is mekadesh the yovel. However, in Mishnah Torah, the mitzvah is clearly that Bezdin are the Mekadesh of the Yovel, the Kidashtem, and it's a mitzvah mutelis al Bezdin. Now, interesting. The Rambam in Mishnah Torah brings together the mitzvah of Svira and Kiddush Bezdin in Perek Yud Halacha Aleph together. Because basically, logically, it's an extension. There's a mitzvah of Svira and there's a mitzvah of Kiddush. In Sefer HaMitzvos, the Rambam moved Svira all the way to mitzvah Kuf Mem. Because mitzvah Kuf Mem is not related at all Svira. Svira of Shnei HaShmita to get to Yovel is not related at all to the mitzvah Kiddush, because the mitzvah Kiddush is not on Bezdin. It's a mitzvah called Yochid v'Yochid to keep the mitzvahs of Shvisas HaAdoma. And the truth is, Ram Pirush Mishnayis in Rosh Hashanah Perek Beis Mishnah Ches also seems to say that Vikidashtem is on Bezin, it's a Kiddush. Where Belozo Oime, ein Choyvel Kaddish is a Chodesh, B'shum Oifen. Shnev Vikidashtem es Shnas HaChamishim. Es Chamishim Shona. Shonim Atot, so referring to Bezin Mekadosh, V'yatom Mekadosh Chadoshim. Kloima, She'ein Kiddush Kol Chodesh Choyvel. On the other hand, the Ram seems to say the mitzvahs on Kol Yochav Yochad also in Pirush B'Snayis and Rosh Hashanah in Perek Aleph Mishnah Aleph Uli Shmitem Uli Yovelos Afal Pi Shein Dini Ayovel Maschil Nel Masir B'Chodesh Harei Merosh Hashanah V'Chulei Fi Shenema She'oma, he says Merosh Hashanah Mitchila Kedushoso U'Mistalekes Ho'avoide Min Ho'avodim Shenema She'oma Hashem V'Kidashtem Eshnas HaChamishim Shona. So the Shichur Avodim is that's the mitzvah. So I don't know if it's a stira. Maybe both are possible. Maybe there's a in V'Kidashtem mitzvah on the Yochanan and on Bezin. I don't know, but that's l'chayra what he's doing in the Pirush Mishnayos. The Minchas Chinuch clearly points out in Mitzvah Shin Lamed Beis Ois Aleph Baram Kan Perek Yud Aloch Aleph Kos Mitzvah Aseh Lispo Ulekadish Nas Chamish Nemu Kedashtem Ushtei Mitzvahs Elu Mesulim LeBezin Agol LeBovad Muud Devar Mitzvah Zu Hi Rak Al Bezin LeKadish Avolo Klal Al Shvisa Demut Al Kol Yisrael V'Gabe Shmita V'Perek Aleph Kos Avdu Mitzvah Aseh V'Oiva Al Aseh Chutz Min Alav V'kan gabayoy v'lo kosav zeh rak b'seif haperek kosav dina yoyvo that it's also, but doesn't say where it comes from. So it seems that the Rama Mishnah Torah, the mitzvah of Kiddush Hayovel, is through Bezdin, and here in Minyan HaMitzvos, in Minyan HaKotzer, the mitzvah is on Yechidim through Shvis Oretz. Now here, there's an interesting thing going on. The Leiv Sameach is the kasha, and shows you Dalit. Mashi Hiksha, Sheim came Nimna Gama Shvisa Molis Hakalcha. Why did you count the Shvisa of Yovel and Shemitah as one aseh? Milav Kushihi, Teafel Pishain, B'Shmitah v'Yovel Echod, V'hi Ashvisa, Me'avodes Kalka, B'Komokoim, Ein Lichlal Oisem B'Achas, Kivish HaKosav V'Dilim B'Shemois, B'Zu, Kosav B'Choshev Kosav Tishbois, V'Zu Kosav Kiddush Mishnas HaChamishim. So he says that the Torah has different lashonos by them. Muvad Hevla Shemois Yesh Gam Gehevla B'Inyan Ki B'Shmita Gozal Bo HaKosav Shtei Mitzvos Aseh, and here it's only one Mitzvah Aseh in Yovel. Now I'm very confused. The difference in Lashon by itself is not enough, because the Ram clearly says in Church Chi that unless Hine Kvoy Isboyer Bio Sholem Shein Loy Limno is Kol Lav Shim Sabater V'le Kol Asei Bavur Shia Nichbal V'omnam Loy Limno is Huinyonim HaMitzvos Behem Oyamuza Behem V'efshe Yedias Halav V'asei Hanichbal. You can't know if it's the same thing or it's a different Inyan. Shehu Ba L'Teisis Inyan Ella B'Moire Yere Olav V'hem Mekabli Apirish Alei Mashal. You can only know from a Tikei Shmur. So I don't know if you have a clue here from Matiki Ashmur. So I would have said the opposite. Since the Loshen HaKosov is Meire, that it's a separate Inyan, and the Matiki Ashmur were quiet, and you could make a mistake over here, that itself is commission. The omission is they basically say it's two inyanim, just by omission. And that's the Rambam. If you look at the Rambam, what the Rambam says, the mitzvah, when he starts off, the mitzvah is not shvisa on Yovel. The mitzvah is l'kadish nasachamishim. And he tells you how you mekayim that mitzvah's kiddush is through shvisa. But the mitzvah is not shvisa. The mitzvah is kiddush. And that here is what I was looking for. I'm sorry. In Kuf Lamed Vav, in the Minyan HaKotz, he says, "L'kadesh nas yovel b'shvisa." You're mekadesh it through shvisa, but the mitzvah kiddush. Here, also, l'cheira, you have another point over here. Since the Teres Kohanim says there's an equation on Shemitah between the Ashor and the Aseh, where the Rambam interprets it, it means Mefurish that the Matiki Ashmur said that there's a Mitzvah Aseh, a separate Mitzvah Aseh by Yovel. And this would, the way he's interpreting this Sifra, that's another answer to the question. Webei Omu, Kishem Shenema B'Shvius, Kach Nema B'Yovel, Kloima, Hashvo B'Neim B'Tzivui, Kmo Shehish B'Neim HaKosov B'Ashor. So there's an Aseh, and there's a Lois Aseh. The same way as a Lois Aseh, there's an Aseh. Now, I'll start this, and Mitzvah Shem, I'll pick this up in Mitzvah Shem next week. Interesting to compare and contrast the Rambam to Hafsadi going. The Rambam has in the Hafsadi going in Perek Gimel, it's a Perek of Kibur HaMoadim. Mikol Kodesh means you mechabed Shabbos, you mechabed Yontif. It says it's through calling it something, saying it. I didn't say Good Shabbos or Kiddush or something or davening. It doesn't say exactly how it is, but to give to mechabed, to honor the day and say that it's not an ordinary day. It's very different. V'omer al shnas hachamishim v'hishve oisom b'shvius v'kinashtem shnas hachamishim shona. V'omer shnas hachamishim, and it's the peg. The mitzvah is like Mikol Kodesh, a Parshas Moadim, to call it a pair that could, a Ktush Tazman. This year is Yovel. This year is Shvius. However, he has another set of mitzvahs in Perek Yudalid, the Chayvus Shechayob Mo'uma Kula, which are on the community as a whole, not individuals, on page 121. V'alakol lechabed es shnas hachamishim. Kibud kavod b'shtei mitzvahs. Kol koine soda machziro lebal soda, that the sodas go back, v'yachzav v'anirtza, and the Eved Ivri goes back to from even though he was nirtza. Asher hoya meshuba la'adonai el mishpachtoi v'shivtoi ukfi she'omar al shneim v'shavtem ish al achuzasai v'goymer v'ein ze, this is not a yochid el alo min ha'uma shenem v'kolasem dro ba'oretz l'chol yeshmer. It's on the community as a whole. So the two mitzvahs of covered in Yovel. There's to mechabed the day, the year of Yovel by giving it a certain name, and there's new mitzvahs, but it's very different for the Rambam. The Rambam, the Shvisa Mimolocha is Mekadesh, and here it's those things which are peculiar to Yovel. He doesn't talk about Shvisa Molocha, but Shvisa for those things peculiar to Yovel. Hachzoras Hasodes, Seachuza, and the Nilza that goes through. Mitzvah will pick it up next week.